All right. So I am here to talk to you about the political philosophy of Robert A. Heinlein. Robert A. Heinlein was an American science fiction author who was born in Missouri in 1907. He spent some years in the Navy, but after being medically discharged from the Navy, he turned to writing for his career. His first story was published in August of 1939, and in his lifetime, he would see the publication of 32 complete novels, 59 short story collections, and 59 short stories and 16 story collections. It's a really prolific output, and it helps us answer the question of why we should study Heinlein. Heinlein is one of the best-selling science fiction authors in American history, and a writer whose work has been recognized by the Library of Congress as being culturally important. Um, some of his fans and researchers claim that he has sold over 30 million copies of his books in the United States alone. And these books that he's published are filled with his own unique ideas on things like race, religion, gender, and especially on politics. In these 80 plus years of publication, because he's still in publication today, millions of people have read his ideas, especially his political ideas, and may have taken them to heart and incorporated them into their own unique political philosophies. As such, I believe it is important we understand what he is trying to say and the political ideas he is putting in his novels, so that we can figure out where he stands politically and what the messages he is trying to get across are. So, to try and answer these questions and figure out where Heinlein is on a political spectrum, and I read four of his novels. Well, I read a lot more, but these are the four that really are important. Um, They're his four Hugo Award winning novels: Double Star, Starship Troopers, Stranger in a Strange Land, and The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. I read these four novels and analyzed them for their political content, in particular, looking for how they viewed the nature of the relationship between state and citizen, as that would be a very effective way for me to find where Heinlein is on a traditional political spectrum. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Heinlein's political philosophy is almost entirely unique, and it is often contradictory. As such, it is nearly impossible to place him on a political spectrum. These four books, they're just a snapshot of his larger body of work. But in these four books, he can be found, like in The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, on the far left of the political spectrum, where he's advocating for outright class revolutions and class warfare, and on the far right of the political spectrum in Starship Troopers, where he is advocating for a one world government that imposes capital and corporal punishment for every crime and who severely limits who has suffrage in their version of democracy. As such, it's hard to place Heinlein on a political spectrum because of these conflicting views. One view pulls him to the left, one view pulls him to the right, but I would not put him in the center. But when it comes to the state itself, it's interesting because Heinlein tends to advocate for a state that is involved in the citizen's life, but only to ensure their rights and liberties. For him, any kind of further involvement, such as involvement in trade or love and marriage, is entirely unethical and outside of the state's bounds. But that's not just it. For Heinlein, the citizen also has an obligation to the state, such as in Starship Troopers. They have an obligation to serve the state in order to preserve the state and to benefit from the state's protections. Now, that is just the briefest possible explanation I could give of these works. They are long. The paper itself is long. So if you have any questions or if you want to read the paper yourself, please feel free to give me an email. I would love to send the paper your way.